Chapter 2. Come. He took my hand and led me to the ticket window. I tugged his 6'6" frame down into the atmosphere where I lived. He bent, putting his face so close to mine I could smell the faint scent of peppermint, my favorite candy. It made my mouth water. What is it, Share? The word he used made me pause. It dripped with affection, like something a man would say to his lover. My body agreed with my mind's observation. Heat curled deep in my belly. I tugged my hand free and he spoke again. Do not move from my side. The djinn is not gone. If I'm touching you, he can't blink away with you. Blink with me? Shit. Fear snaked its way to the forefront of my thoughts again, pushing aside my hunger and arousal. I'd forgotten djinn were capable of teleportation. The guy in the suit had vanished from the bus station. Of course he was gone, right? He wouldn't just wait outside for me. My thoughts raced. Or would he? Nausea chased away every shred of calm I'd mustered, replacing it with terror. I'd merely needed to go use the ladies' room, but now I was afraid to leave Eric's side. What if the suited supernatural creep was hiding in there and somehow stole me from the bathroom? This day was getting shittier by the hour. Actually, it was morning now, so the shit was just carrying over into the next day. What was I going to do when the sun came up and Eric had to go hide, or whatever vampires did during the day? There were only a few hours left before sunrise. I glanced out the front doors, sucking in a quick breath of relief at the still black sky. What about when the sun comes up? He squeezed my hand and took the tickets from the clerk behind the thick glass window. I can walk in the sun, Share. What does that mean? I asked, ignoring his crazy answer about walking in the sun. It means I will not leave your side, even when the sun rises. No. I shook my head. I mean that strange word you keep calling me. Share. It means beautiful. Beautiful. That was hard to believe. I was a mess. There was nothing beautiful about my bright blue Seafood Shack t-shirt, ratty jeans, and old gray tennis shoes. On top of everything, I smelled like something that might crawl out of a sewer. You are, he added, again acting like he could read my thoughts. You will feel better after a shower and a good meal. As he led me back to the bench, my bladder reminded me of its desperate need to relieve itself. I gestured to the bathroom and he redirected our path. He stopped in front of the family's single restroom, opened the door, and stuck his head inside before letting me go in. Be quick, little one. The bathroom was dingy and smelled like pee and bleach. I turned on the light and gasped at my reflection in the mirror. My normally silky brown hair was stringy and hung limply in a sagging ponytail. All my makeup had melted away during the course of the day, and my face was flushed pink. I didn't have anything in my bag. No powder, nothing. I'd left everything behind in my toxic apartment. I closed the door and washed up the best I could, redoing my hair into a tighter ponytail. It helped alleviate the homeless vibe I gave off. Then I pulled off the blue Seafood Shack t-shirt and tossed it in the trash can. The only clean shirts I had rescued from my closet were a black tank or a bright pink one. Black it was. I unlocked the door and stepped out, colliding with Eric's chest. He wasn't taking the whole protecting thing lightly. Strangely, it made me feel safer instead of more worried. He wasn't warm, but he was a wall of muscle. I'd never had something or someone as strong as he was on my side before. We walked to our idling bus along with a half-dozen others. As small as he'd made the town out to be, I was surprised by how many were headed the same way. As we shuffled down the aisle of the bus, I noted several nicely dressed businessmen, a red-headed young woman, and a handsome man whose gaze lingered a little longer on my body than I appreciated. I followed Eric to the back of the bus and settled on the bench next to him. No one gave me a second look after we sat, although several did cover their mouths. I couldn't blame them. I was a hot mess. The smell alone should have cleared the bus, but no one spoke. Not even the bus driver. Why are you helping me? It really didn't make sense. What did he want? Would he sell me? Drink from me himself? My emotions began clouding my brain, and panic threatened to claw its way out of my stomach and drag the rest of me into the dark pit my fear had created. I was on a bus, alone with a vampire and who knew what other kinds of supernaturals. What was I thinking? You're safe now. The djinn can't jump into a moving target. Just try to get some rest. It's about a 2-hour ride to Sanctuary. The calmness in his voice transferred to my terrified body, and my muscles slowly began to relax. One guy, the one who had stared, turned and glared straight at me. His eyes flashed a bright gold, and I saw just a hint of fangs beneath his top lip. You could at least wash what you plan to eat before subjecting the rest of us to such a stench. His voice was low, but I could understand every cruel syllable. 1 second Eric was beside me, and the next he wasn't. The asshole complaining about me coughed, and I sucked in a quick breath. Eric had him by the throat and growled something I couldn't understand. It sounded like more of his native language. Whatever it was, it didn't drip with affection like it had when he called me beautiful. This time it sounded like a knife, and he used it to cut the jerk down to size. The guy seemed to understand and apologized profusely. The rest of the bus fell silent. No one moved to help the man or hinder Eric. A flick of Eric's wrist sent the groveling male sailing toward me. I barely held in a shriek when he landed only inches from my feet. Apologize. Eric's voice was granite hard and carried over the rumble of the bus with absolute authority. Every head bowed, and still no one spoke. The guy below me prostrated himself on the floor of the bus. Please forgive me. I spoke out of turn. I should have been more respectful. An I do squeaked out of my throat as I pulled my legs up under my body away from the stranger's face. The terror in his yellow eyes surprised me, but I wasn't the one he feared. Eric stood calmly in the center of the aisle, his blue eyes sharp as glass and his mouth open in a snarl, fangs bared menacingly. I couldn't help but shiver. He caught my stare, and everything about him changed back. His face softened, fangs disappeared. Even his stance relaxed. He moved toward me as the other man backed away. I wouldn't have to ask him to eat my ex. Kevin would bring it on himself if he ever came around. Maybe my identity would be easier to hide in a small town. I hoped so. I needed a chance to rest. A chance to live without fear of being caught and dragged back into the hell I'd experienced with him. Beaten until my spirit wilted at the very sound of his voice, and sexually used every day before being chained or caged for the night. Dying was preferable to being caught by that son of a bitch. Eric settled in next to me. He wrapped an arm around my shoulder and pulled me closer, surprising me with a soft kiss on the crown of my head. You are safe with me, Shade. Always. Maybe it was my exhaustion, but I nodded my head and leaned against his chest. An unfamiliar silence greeted my ear. No heartbeat. Still, I found comfort in his strength, and I believed him. My name is Bailey Ross, I mumbled as my eyes closed and I began to drift off. At least that's what my name was right now. Since running from Kevin, I changed it as often as I changed clothes. It's nice to meet you, Bailey Ross. My name slipped from his lips slowly, like he was tasting a sweet treat. Maybe he'd be tasting me later. I found myself perfectly content with that expectation as the vibrations of the bus on the highway and his pleasant scent lulled me to sleep. The screech of brakes roused me from my deep sleep, and I opened my eyes to find Eric typing in a number on his cell. He put the small glass screen to his ear and then looked at me. I need you to remain calm and still. Fear clenched in my belly again, and I nodded. Rose, we're on the bus in. Darius is on the move again. He pressed the screen again and slipped the phone into his pocket. Get it. He pointed at the man with the sometimes yellow eyes. Sit next to her and hold tight. I'll take care of the djinn. But, my brain raced, trying to understand, but I was still groggy. Darius was back? We were in the middle of a highway. And he was asking the man who'd been ugly earlier to watch over me?
Calm and still,
Eric repeated and held my face for a moment with his free hand. I met his gaze again, trying to scrape up enough courage not to start bawling like an infant. Nothing I did could hide the tremor in my lip, though.
You are safe, Bailey, but whatever happens while I'm gone, do not let go of Garrett.
His claim reassured me and terrified me at the same time, but then he leaned down and pressed a kiss to my dry, trembling lips. It was soft and reminded me of the kindness I heard in his voice. I nodded against his mouth. He pulled back swiftly and exited the bus before I could speak. At least he'd confirmed he was interested in more than just drinking my blood. Garrett moved nearly as fast, replacing Eric by my side and wrapping an arm around one of mine. His breathing was heavy, and I could hear a rumbling growl coming from his chest. He was tense, but in control.
I'm sorry about before. I shouldn't have opened my mouth and said what I did about you. It's been a rough couple of days.
Join the club. Mine went from shitty to nuclear, I replied, a heavy sigh slipping from my chest. 2 men were hunting me, and both would do horrible things if they caught me.
I'm sorry.
He tightened his hold on me.
No one should have to suffer the way you have. I'm truly sorry.
Again with the mind reading. Could they all smell pheromones the way Eric had mentioned?
Nope, I can actually read your mind.
I tried to jerk away, but he tightened his grip.
If Darius is here, he can't snatch you away if I'm hanging on to you. Djinn can only blink with one extra body in tow.
Good to know. What are you? I stopped trying to pull away and glanced out the window. Morning sunlight began to warm the blue skies, from a dark navy to a soft lavender. But Eric said he could walk in the sun. He'd said he wouldn't leave me.
Lycan,
Garrett answered. A werewolf? They were the ones who'd been caught on video first. The very first riot happened after a half-dozen werewolves tore up downtown Los Angeles in 2046.
We prefer to be called Lycan.
A thud outside rattled my nerves. I held my breath and closed my eyes. Garrett's grip on my arm tightened more, and a terrifying growl ripped from his throat.
You'll pay for helping the Protector.
A silky male voice spoke from the middle of the bus.
She was mine first. He stole her from me.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. It was Creepy Suit Djinn Guy. Eric had called him Darius. Where was Eric? I wanted him. He calmed me. I dug my fingers into Garrett's jacket and hung on, praying he'd spoken the truth about Djinn not being able to blink with more than one passenger.
Possession is 9/10 of the law, asshole,
Garrett snarled and pulled me into his lap. I didn't object and wrapped my arms around his neck. Darius charged and Garrett ducked to the floor with me stuck to his chest like a baby in a sling. A loud snarl from the doorway preceded Eric's voice.
Get out!
The bus driver and all the other passengers fled, except one. A female voice began chanting something in Latin, and Darius screamed in pain before blinking away. Eric left the bus again, and Garrett moved me back to the seat, still keeping a heavy hand attached to my arm. He peered out the window and then over at the red-headed female near the front. Eric reappeared at the door.
Thank you for your assistance, Meredith.
He bowed his head. I'm just glad I was here, she said. The bus driver climbed up and stopped next to Eric.
Is it safe to start again? I nearly lost it when I saw that man just standing in the middle of the highway. Then that witch started jabbering back there. There was no man. You saw a deer cross the road and stopped the bus to avoid killing it. There was no witch, no fight. This run was as uneventful as your last.
Eric's voice was low, but I could hear every word. The driver had seen and heard everything. People screaming, growling, showing fangs. He couldn't possibly think the man would just forget.
Yeah, this is a problem area for deer crossing.
The driver nodded his head and returned to his seat, ready to continue the run. What the hell? I whispered.
Don't ask,
Garrett answered. He influenced him somehow. How? My mouth just kept moving of its own accord. Why doesn't anyone know they can do that?
Hush,
Garrett hissed. I snapped my mouth shut, but my brain kept turning. Mind control? The bus rumbled to life and Eric made his way down the aisle.
Thank you for protecting Bailey. I'm at your service, Protector. I'm visiting my brother Travis, but if you need me for anything, I'll be there. I hope we can look past my previous crudeness. You are forgiven. No debt is owed.
Garrett stood and moved past Eric, leaving the bench next to me empty. Sitting next to Garrett had been like sitting in the center of an asphalt road at noon in the Vegas desert. He put off heat like a hot oven. In this Texas heat, Eric's cool skin was a beautiful thing. I leaned against him as he settled onto the seat next to me. He'd protected me. Garrett had too. I was safe with these men, at least for now. It was a strange feeling to be indebted to men, but almost anything was better than Kevin or a psychopathic djinn bent on who knew what. The news media didn't spare any gory details when it came to reporting about the most dangerous other known to exist. Eric's mind control ability had me concerned, but he hadn't given me any reason not to trust him. Garrett's mind reading had me a little unnerved as well. Then there was the little red-headed witch halfway up the aisle who'd somehow forced Darius to leave. I was somewhat aware of the supernatural powers that others possessed, but I'd never heard of vampires influencing memories or lichens reading minds. This type of information, if known at all, was not public. The news that was reported talked about vampires and werewolves like they were animals. Sometimes they even mentioned cleaning out a coven of witches. Cleaning? Like they were a dirty closet that needed to be gone through and the trash tossed out. Weren't they just people? The red-headed woman on the bus sure looked like an average person I might have served at the seafood shack. The young woman leaned out of the seat and glanced at me as if she knew I was contemplating her existence. Her hazel eyes met my gaze and she smiled and leaned back. Darius had called Eric a protector. So had Garrett. I'd never heard that term used in school. Supernatural studies had been a required class in high school since the riots. It gave a broad overview of all known species, their weaknesses, and their strengths. Apparently not all the strengths were known. Probably not all their weaknesses either. I sat with a vampire while the early rays of morning light caressed the bare skin of his arm. No smoldering, no burning. He even looked like he had a pretty good tan. My brain jumped back to the mind control. Garrett told me to be quiet, and it would make sense that vampires would want to keep that sort of thing a secret. I couldn't even imagine what the governments might try to force on them. As of right now, they were lucky to be alive anywhere outside the states of the Texas Republic. In the other republics, it was legal to shoot and kill any supernatural being without cause or provocation. Old billboards along highways touted their slogans every few miles. Humans have rights, others don't. Some extremists took those words to heart, but the average person didn't go around shooting anyone. The police, on the other hand, were a different matter. I'd seen more than one other executed on sight by a police officer.
Your mind is spinning, Shade. What's bothering you?
If you can influence a human the way you did the bus driver, why don't you do that to more people to make it easier for you to live? He sighed and pulled me tighter to his chest.
Is it our place to tell everyone what to think, how to feel?
No, I suppose not.
There are vampires that misuse the ability, but the majority use it sparingly and always have. Thus the general public and governments are unaware.
I nodded. I won't say anything. But did it hurt the bus driver?
If used numerous times on the same human, their brain can suffer, but a mental push now and then does no permanent damage.
Can a person be uninfluenced?
Yes.
Will Darius come after me again?
Yes.
Damn. No hesitation in that answer. But you said he couldn't come to Sanctuary.
He probably will not, Eric answered. Not that he couldn't.
Okay. Fear was slithering back around again. That djinn had been pissed, and Eric had already said they had a history. I didn't need more anguish in my life. Kevin brought me enough as it was. What am I supposed to do with that? I've already got one psycho ex. I don't need a djinn hunting me to the ends of the earth, too. How do we get rid of him? Crap. I hadn't meant to mention Kevin. Way to go, Bailey. Pile on the baggage. Push away the only man who's been genuinely nice to you in years. Every friendship I'd ever tried to have in the past had been ruined by Kevin. History was doomed to repeat itself. Eventually, he would find me, even in a small, out-of-the-way town. You were running from a human. An ex? I swallowed a sob. I don't want to talk about it. I just need a place to take a shower and maybe eat a hot meal. I'll be out of your hair ASAP, I promise. You don't have to talk about it, Share. Tears ran down my cheeks. His tenderness tore at the walls I'd built around my heart. Why did he care? No one had truly cared for me in years. Of course, I hadn't slowed down long enough to let anyone get close either. But you should reconsider staying in sanctuary a while. You will not be in my hair, as you put it. A gentle chuckle rumbled in his chest. I will watch over you for as long as you need. Don't worry about your ex or Darius. Both would be fools to step a single foot into sanctuary. He's right, you know, the redhead called out from several rows up. Darius might come to sanctuary, but he'd be a fool to stay for more than a minute or two. The sentinel would make sure of that. I shifted in my seat and looked up into Eric's tranquil blue eyes. What is a sentinel? Rose is the sentinel.